History distilled to mythology, science distilled to politics. So I was with this guy as friends, and I was making a video about these three pitiful, fading, worthless feminists, so-and-so and the two other bitches, who last year either made or began promoting an anti-pornography documentary called Hot Girls Wanted. I was making these analysis about how, oh, blah, 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 women are way more involved in education, and now education isn't worth anything because women are handed the education so that men can just be funneled through a backdoor draft into war, but also into dangerous, grueling jobs, etc. So after this video, that, or as I like to call it, that, made the point that it's going to be really eerie when women start taking the reins significantly of history. Obviously, to an extent, some do. And I was agreeing that, yeah, it's hard enough to take the people that we socialize to have a vested interest in reality, science and math, for example, men. It's hard enough to trust them with the reins of history, much less would we be able to trust women with the reins of history. I agree with that point. But then he starts making these analyses about, back in the day when people weren't just doing it for money, it was something you could trust the content more. The example that he gave is Montaigne, Michel de Montaigne, 1700s French philosopher, especially known for his essays. Not those kind of essays like here in Mexico. So for the essays. Let's just go around this way. I don't want to walk through doing the recording. And he made the analysis, the Montaigne's and such, he was a rich guy, Montaigne was, and then he retired, and then he set out to share his wisdom. That's how this guy framed it up. And right away I said, man, I'm going to have to put on the video and start talking trash about this guy. See, what happened is, Montaigne, after amassing a fortune, retired to his estate and handed over the affairs of the state to his underlings. Now we call them children. And when he wrote his essays, in the preface, he specifically says, this is not meant to be some bit of me passing wisdom to people. This is my advice on the way I see life, and it's meant for my close friends and family. He specifically said, this is not for all y'all. Humble as he was, and then a lot of people picked up on it and liked it. So what I would say to this guy, and I'm gonna say it, and then we'll put him on the spot, he'll have to answer to all these curvy Latino women just randomly roaming. No, I would say that when we start to unnecessarily and destructively reward women with educational achievements, when really it's just them sitting in rows filling out forms, and now there's a complete lack of critical thinking skills, and people recognize, well, diplomas don't really mean much. What can you actually do? Because we've watered it down. It's the greatest educational what's that called when money inflation, educational inflation, handing incompetent women degrees. It'd be bad enough to hand incompetent men degrees, because then they would feel coerced to earn and contribute. Women feel coerced to take care of themselves and find attached like a remora to a shark, attach themselves to a man so that she can seek indirect domination of the men who seek direct domination. That's a Schopenhauer reference. So we have this inflation, and what I would say to this guy, even though I'm beardless, even though I am Lampiño, it's break for a second. Puerto Ricans are freaking awesome. Not this one. He's half Mexican, so he's kind of half fail. Puerto Ricans have a word for people like me who cannot grow hair. Lampiño. That's not really that awesome. They have a word for assless women. Chumba. They have these words. I mean, really, Puerto Ricans and Germans should just get together and make the coolest words that help us understand the world around us. So what I would say to this Des Lampiño, I guess that's what it's called. They say Des Lampiño, like a not Lampiño?
This is normal.
Okay, a normal. This normal person, how dare he? This cis hair guy, I'm a trans hair guy. What I would say to him is that as we start to reward women unnecessarily with the achievement of doctor or contributor of history, then we will finally achieve what we needed in the first place: more gatekeepers for the analysis of history. Which is to say, we won't just take it as appeals to authority. Well, they're a historian, they would know. It will have to be either verifiable or at least reasonable. For example, in the United States was created to foster personal freedom and historical and religious freedom. Then why did they start mandating certain religions to different colonies, and why did they have slaves? Oh, because it was actually one class of people that didn't want to be under the thumb of another class of people, so that they came and they started their own theocracies and aristocracies here. And as far as slavery, white people created slavery and black people was just poor. Oh, don't you mean that white people tried to colonize, meaning Europeans, they tried to colonize Africa, but they couldn't. Like, they colonized a lot of places. They couldn't colonize Africa because they couldn't survive the malaria. And so instead, they pulled resources out, most notably the resource of people. And they depended 100%, as in it couldn't have happened without the complicity of Africans. More analysis like that will be necessary once women, which is to say the remoras of culture, become the dispensers of history. Because it will be a dispensing of history. It'll be a dispensing, getting rid of getting rid of appeals to authority. Now, up until very recently, where so much information is available to so many people, the people who had the information were the ones who distributed the information. It didn't matter how well you distributed, how good you taught, or how reasonably, or how you tied it in meaningfully to the world, your critical thinking, nothing. It was just you had the information, you imparted the information. That was as good as it had because we couldn't distribute information. Now we can. So what we have now is a doing away with, or what we can have is a doing away with, for example, teachers talking against, eventually when you get to college, they'll talk against appeals to authority. For example, I was in my advanced composition English class. It would be the equivalent of rhetoric in a lot of classes, argumentation and rhetoric. And we're learning, well, they're learning and I'm going over a thin version of informal logical fallacies. Not important, but one of them being appeal to authority. Like, I say this, therefore it is. Oh, he's a man, therefore, or he's a white person, therefore, oh, he's from America, or anything like that. No. The idea is right or wrong, regardless of whatever characteristic you would appeal to as far as authority, including the authority. Just, I'm the teacher, therefore. It's necessary to an extent to say, okay, I'm the teacher, therefore you all have to sit still and listen to me. Why can't we all just talk at the same time? Well, we appeal to my authority for me to dish out the information, but the information itself too often relied on an appeal to authority, such that when we were going through appeals to authority, this teacher, like so many I've dealt with, they referred to appeals to authority as appeals to improper authority, as in, well, if your doctor tells you not to do this thing that they're not specialized for, that's an appeal to authority, that's not their specialization. No, that's appeal to false authority. Appeal to authority is you have to do this because a doctor said it, therefore they're right. When you explain that to a teacher, they're broken and they don't know what to say to that, because so many times all they have is their appeal to authority. Exceptions being scientists and mathematicians, because if you go to a physics class and he says this and that, make this, and you go, I feel that they don't. Oh, well, let's watch them make that. See how that happened? I feel that if you were a Gemini and you ran that experiment, then things would, no. However, so many other things depend on an appeal to authority, and traditionally nothing more so than history. History has been distilled to nothing but mythology. And science, likewise, more and more is distilled to politics. That's where we get nonsense like the gay gene and all these other things. The example that he was giving is how, after decades of contributing to the torture of faggots, of people who choose to be homosexual, you can't, that's the new shit. People who choose to be homosexual were tortured throughout the ages because of institutions like the American Psychological Association. And now they come out and say, never mind, the science says that there's a gay gene. That is science being distilled to nothing but politics. So my point to this guy was, Now that we have, and this is all just a preface, and then we're going to hear something. Now that we have quintessential incompetent people, academic women, being rewarded to impart history, we will necessarily develop mental gatekeeping of our own, where we do not just rely on appeals to authority, where we expect there to be statements made that are either verifiable or highly reasonable, or we don't care. If they're not verifiable, or at least very reasonable, we're not interested in that historical analysis. And one more bit was that, oh, and it has to be meaningful too. No pointless historical facts that really do nothing for us. That's just what's going to happen. It shouldn't. Now that women are in charge, we should go through another couple decades or centuries of ineptitude and mediocrity of historians. Well, the devolving of historians into nothing but mythology is what opened the door for mediocre people, which is to say female academics, to get into the realm of historians in general. So it does seem unfair that just when the standard became so low that a female academic could be a historian, now we're going to actually apply the kind of gatekeeping we should have had in the first place. Might be unfair, but it is a fact. We're going to have to start recognizing that you have to think and analyze what anyone tells you, including historians. So I don't think, in the final analysis, that it'll be a bad thing that females, the social toddler, willful second-class citizens who beg for their dominance, I don't think it'll be a bad thing that they become historians, because it will necessitate not taking them serious as authority figures. Rather, they will be at most repositories of information who can impart it meaningfully and insist critical analysis, or they will be stepped over in the capitalist tradition of somebody else providing a superior good or service.
That is best case scenario.
It's the best case scenario, and as I'm contending, it cannot happen any other way unless you hugely stupefy everyone into staying with the appeal to authority.
Yep.
And anyone who sneaks around and does otherwise, they will be superior, and so they will get the information out, and meticulous falsehood necessitates so much bolstering.
Nope. Whoever remains with the appeal to authority, what the authorities say, remains good. Whoever strays into reasoning and making actual sense will be bad, as it's always been.
That's it. All right. He underestimates the human spirit. See, he thinks he's a former communist and a former Marxist, but he still sticks with the idea that holy with a W, wholly soulless, self-important systems can really hold down the genuine human spirit for search for truth and renunciation of falsehood. He really believes that these systems, precarious as they are,
there is no human spirit for against falsehood. Nope, none at all.
See?
You're saying one thing.
Well, you're just randomly saying shit, though. No, you're just saying the thing that you're putting parentheses and a -1 in front of what I say and just flipping it.
And I guess you're doing the exact same thing.
See? But that level of analysis won't hold once you see everything as far as the previous way of doing things falling apart, as in the competition of people who think that simplify, well, it's always been this way, it'll always be this way. You can't do that because of this. The house always wins. we see that falling apart. We see people with college degrees being amazingly useless. I mean, for you to think that these things just sustain themselves as they always do, and government will decide what's right, and those who are wrong, or those who, it's as Voltaire said, it's dangerous to be right in matters where establishment or where government is wrong. Meanwhile, we have examples like Rome, as in when things go so far out, far afield, and off the trunk, off the branch, off the leaves, they disappear, and it happens all the time. You can break yourself against reality. You cannot break reality. It seems in our short frame of reference that no, they really have a stranglehold. You know, the United States is really winning versus Cuba. No, not really. It's bound to fail because it takes way too much energy to make such meticulous lies and create such a tower of cards.
Hold on, I'm evading the train. What?
Oh, and those are trains too. That was it. It takes way too much energy. We have the example of Rome, where no, the house doesn't always win. Well, it's going to fall, or it's going to, and the people who insisted on sticking to the more meaningful analysis, for example, of history, they will be the Masons, not the Freemasons, the Masons who built, well, their progeny, the people who, whether by blood or
spiritual progeny. Right.
Yeah, they will be the ones to Mason to lay the bricks and foundation of the next dispensation. Woo! $10 words of thinkers who will recognize, even if our technological elements aren't used or something else is used, or it just falls apart and we all become Luddites, anti-technology people, they will be telling of a time when what's his face said it really good, where hospitals destroy health, government destroys freedom, or colleges, universities destroy knowledge, etc., etc. It was what's his name? He wrote the Empire of Illusions. Christopher Hedges. Chris Hedges, yeah. They'll tell of a time like that, and so what I'm simply, my thesis is that your doomsday prediction about women in history, women as historians, can't happen because they're so mediocre they could never pull it off, because it's a tower of cards to begin with when you don't critically analyze what people tell you, much less when it's something about history, as in something so meaningful as to inform us what we should be doing and what we should set up to do. It can only be a tower of cards if, you know, those who ignore history, miscontextualize history, are condemned to repeat it and all that kind of stuff.
Well, history was forgotten already once, and whatever happened way back thousands of years ago is forgotten, and what we have now is what the mediocre city historians wrote.
Well, one example, but it's not always. Sometimes certain principles remain. For example, heterosexuality. The Bible, a bunch of Jews, etc., got together and they pretended that an imaginary friend told them, if you fuck butt, your imaginary friend will be mad at you. And so they said that. But meanwhile, it's a biological principle that if you fuck butt, you're not moving on to the next generation of evolution, because it's unsustainable. Quote, biology. So you can get rid of the systems whereby people understand how the world works. And you can get rid of some of the people. Well, you know, all the people eventually. In the end, we're all dead. According to Keynesian economics, in the end, we're all dead. But certain...
If you're defining history as how the world works, then you're way out.
I didn't define history as how the world works. You said that what happened thousands of years ago is forgotten and gone. I said that vapors of it, remnants, as in fundamental principles, remain because they echo as reality.
Right.
So to the extent that our historians help... Well, the principles behind what happened aren't lost because they still are going on, and that's what I'm saying. The point. Well, that's
and it will always be wrong.
well, that's completely pointless. You like history as just a masturbation or something, because we don't.
Collection of stories.
Well, if it's not meaningful, then it's just a collection of stories. If it's not something we can apply, then it's just a collection of stories. But if it's a way to understand general principles and objective truth, then history is not just a collection of stories. And all I'm saying is, as soon as people cross the border, their asses fall off. You do not see women like this in the States. Yeah, there's fat ones here and there, and blah, 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 and there's a lot of, what's it called? Diabetes here. Yeah, lots of it. But, man, just saying. Gender roles. Let's just round it off as that. There's a lot of places that speak historically of gender roles. Mexicans are following the gender roles because Catholicism tells them to. Nevertheless, the individual stories are lost in history or miscontextualized, or you know what's cool now as a Catholic? Kill your kids and fuck butt. That brand of Catholicism won't remain because biology is homophobic. Biology just doesn't reward homosexuality the way that it rewards heterosexuality. That's bigoted. That's bigoted of biology. That's discriminatory. Okay. So reality discriminates. We've established that. So what have you to say in defense of your analysis of...
Depends on what?
Well, that female historians are going to ruin everything.
No, I was saying that I couldn't trust them.
Well, yeah, but my point is you can't trust anybody that you just trust because they're a historian. So that female historians are going to require of people like you,
that's why you
to be more careful, like you should have been in the first place, regardless that they had dicks.
The other thing, I don't trust the male historians just because. Rather, I trust the. Wait, I never. I trust the character.
Right, and you shouldn't, is what I'm saying. Is that we should always be critically analyzing history, whether it's verifiable, questioning whether it's verifiable, reasonable, meaningful, and that you're going to be thrust into doing that more because you don't trust the women by default.
Things have happened.
Right. And so it can only get worse with dickless, useless women in charge of history. But I'm saying that will have a positive effect of us being more careful about the way we consider historians.
The carefulness will change the history.
True.
Exactly.
And
it doesn't mean that it's gonna reveal the truth. It's just gonna reveal a
different falsehood. Do you think that the system will adjust and help women be what they are, which is mimics and liars, but as on a historical scale?
The whole point of history, to be a mimic.
Yeah.
Women are just going to be mimics, and then when they have the authority, they'll make their own interpretation, and then they're gonna tell it differently, and it's gonna change the way people think.
Well, I'm not as forgiving to women as he is. He assumes they'll be effective. What I'm saying is that they've been socialized, these ones to whom it applies and the ones that we reward. They are so far removed of anything useful, anything resembling reality, that they will all fall on their swords in the name of ideology, and they will all self-destruct to the extent they get power. They say power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's like when they say... Right, see, he says false. What I would say is you can think of it more like spoiling. When you spoil a child, like, yeah, you give them what they want. Spoil, like rotten, destroyed. Power corrupts absolutely in a system where you have to play by the rules of nature, or God, or whatever it is. if you meticulously go against it and create your own fantasy rules, for example, that a butthole is the same as a womb, you don't get to make that up. So power corrupting absolutely is more in the direction of, if you just completely reinvent everything, make it in your own image, you'll be a female historian, and shit's gonna get really, really wacky. He thinks that the system will adjust and adapt and create something new. I think that female historians will be such a laughable wreck that will say, okay, we should have never given such latitude, such reverence to historians at all, even when women were kept out of being historians. But now that we've let the lunatics out of the asylum, ridiculous lunatics, now that they're running the asylum, we recognize it doesn't suit us. And so let's start being objective and scientific in our analysis and passing forward of history, instead of having history as nothing but distilled into mythology, and likewise science as nothing but distilled into politics.
What?
I don't know. I'm just trying to fill up time so that we get to the tires. We're gonna go flip tires. We're gonna go yell at these sidewalk surfers.
Damn kids.
You sidewalk surfers, you get out of here. What do you think this is, a skate park? It's so cool. And they have a dog training area here. That's the Tijuana Zoo back there. They have leopards and white tigers, and they have bears. And they train dogs here. The zoo doesn't, but someone does. Historians. I'm going to tell you of this place. And all the way in the back, there are these big tires. And we flipped them, for we are Vikings.
So Vikings.
I'm a hell of an anorexic Viking. Yeah, you know how we know that Vikings did that? Because I saw it on a guy's blog. He's a historian.
Because female historian said so on the internet.
No, a female historian said that a long time ago women weren't taken very serious, so now we should make the vagina monologues, and we should have women be in charge of a lot of stuff so they can be sassy and wear red dresses up to their vagina lips while all the guys wear suits, because women just have a natural flair. Which reminds me of a joke. Why do women wear makeup and perfume? Because they're ugly and they smell bad. Yeah. So here we are.
It was funny the first time.
No, it wasn't.
After 100 times, it just...
Yeah, it was never funny. Not even the first time.
Not even
Yeah. Where's that big tire? Holy crap, somebody flipped it all the way to oblivion.
Oh, it's above the skate park.
Whoa. Rolled it or something? Alright, so now if you'll excuse me, I will retire from being right. He gave up and just said platitudes in the opposite direction. He just put parentheses and -1 around everything I said, which makes me the winner because I used more words. Now let's all welcome women.